Mr. Chairman, it should be about 15 seconds and then we'll be live streaming.
Thank you.
Okay, we are live streaming.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the remote session of the Maryland Public Service Commission for our meeting for April the 1st, 2020. Before we begin today, I'd like to turn it over to the Executive Secretary to provide some information regarding how we use Zoom and any other logistical concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So today's administrative meeting is going to run pretty much like a normal administrative meeting with a few enhancements. In a minute, I am going to go through a list of each item and the expected participants, and I will announce participants again for the items on the administrative agenda, but not for the consent agenda as we go through each item. For the consent agenda, we will not be elevating people to panelists, but if you wish to be recognized, please use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen and you will come on camera. For the administrative items, item by item, we will elevate attorneys and staff experts to panelists, which will be on camera, but not utility experts. We will be ready to unmute and move any utility experts to panelists upon requests, but that may take 30 seconds or so if we need to go to a utility expert. If you have an issue, please
Work with on a daily basis. I've never been more proud of the people that I work with. With that, we will turn to our meeting, and we have some minutes to approve from our last in-person meeting back on March 11th of 2020. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So the ayes with a thumbs up works. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Mr. Secretary, the consent agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 4 items on today's consent agenda. I won't relist the names, but item 1 is a notification of company name change and replacement tariff from West Safety Communications, Inc. Item 2 is a notice of discontinuance from Broadway Communications, LLC. Item 3 is the application of Crislin Energy Services, Inc. for a license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland. And item 4 is the application of Crislin Energy Services, Inc. for a license to supply natural gas or natural gas supply services in Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Seeing no questions from my fellow commissioners, I would move that with respect to item 1, we note the company's name change and accept the tariff for filing and direct the company to file clean copies of the tariff pages with an effective date of April 1st, 2020. With respect to item 2, we note the filing. With respect to items 3 and 4 collectively, this is Crislin Energy Services. We grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier with respect to item 3 and a natural gas supplier with respect to item 4. In Maryland, limited to broker services for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff, and that we direct the company to provide marketing materials specific to its Maryland operations to the commission staff and Office of People's Counsel 30 days prior to utilization of the materials in Maryland. And finally, direct the company to file notice with the commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in its application.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll take the vote. Sorry, Mr. Secretary.
I'm sorry, there was one raised hand. I believe it was Olivia Kuykendall from staff.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Kuykendall, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Olivia Kuykendall on behalf of staff. I would like to provide additional information for item number 2.
Item number 2, yes, okay.
Yes. Broadway Communications, LLC filed a notice of discontinuance with the Commission on March 2nd, 2020. In staff's comments, we wrote that the company would disconnect customers April 1st, 2020. However, Broadway informed staff that in light of the global crisis, the company does not plan to disconnect customers until May 15th, 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Kuykendall. Your recommendation does not change to note the filing?
It does not change, no.
Okay, thank you for that additional information.
Thank you.
With that, the motions on those 4 items stand. We'll take the vote beginning with Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Linton?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motions are approved. Mr. Secretary, the administrative agenda, please.
Mr. Chairman, item 5 on the administrative agenda consists of tariff revisions from Thermont Municipal Light Company for staff Lloyd Spivak, David Hoppick, and Christopher Lowe. Thermont, we have Jim Humerick, Thomas Rudbush, and Chris Sims, and for OPC, we have Jake Oslander.
Thank you. Good morning. We'll begin with staff's presentation. Mr. Spivak or Mr. Hoppick?
I apologize. I was muted. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. David Hoppick on behalf of staff. Thermont has filed extensive revisions to its service tariff, significant parts of which have not been revised since 1986. To comply with COMAR, provide additional information, and reflect changes to other parts of the tariff made previously. Staff worked extensively with Thermont on the proposed tariff revisions to provide edits to the initial filings. Staff would like to acknowledge Thermont's assistance and patience in working through the issues presented in this filing. In our written comments, staff notes that staff and Thermont, along with OPC, have reached consensus on the tariff with the exception of the return check charge. We were informed by Thermont on March 31st, yesterday, that Thermont now consent to staff's proposed $12.50 return check charge, and thus we have consensus on the proposed tariff language. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the revised tariff as revised by staff to reflect a $12.50 return check charge with an effective date of April 1st, 2020, and direct Thermont to file clean copies of the tariff.
Thank you, Mr. Hoppick. Would Office of People's Counsel like to speak to this matter? We have your pleading.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is Jacob Auslander on behalf of the Maryland Office of People's Counsel. We don't really actually have much to add to what Mr. Hoppick has just presented. In our comment letter, we fully supported staff's proposal, and now that the company has agreed on the issue of the return check fee, it looks like this is a consensus item for the Commission's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Auslander. Counsel for the utility. If counsel has anything to add.
This is Chris Sims. I'm not counsel, but I believe Tom Rudbush is available. But we do echo the comments made by that we are the town of Thermont is in agreement with the changes that we proposed to date, and are willing to file clean copies to those couple changes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sims. We haven't probably seen you since 1986, or at least the utilities filing. But I'm happy to see that all the parties were able to reach consent on this item. Obviously, if the largest sticking point was the fact of the bounce check fee, that bodes well, obviously, to the extent that the utility can defend an increased charge in the future. It may file at any time to do so. I do not see any questions from my fellow commissioners, so I will take a motion. I would move that we accept the revised tariff pages for filing as revised by staff in its comments dated February 26, 2020, and direct the company to file clean copies of the revised tariff pages as just discussed with an effective date of today, April 1st, 2020. We'll begin the vote with Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Linton?
Aye.
And Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion is approved. Thank you to the folks from Thurmont Municipal. The next item, please.
Mr. Chairman, item 6 is the application of Breaker Box LLC for a license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland. For staff, we have Michael Chang and Kenneth Albert. For Breaker Box, Florence Davis and John Slocum, Craig Wilson, and Ari Kramer.
And we should be pulling them up any minute now.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Michael Jang on behalf of staff. This item addresses Breaker Box LLC's application to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker and aggregator services. The company currently operates in Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Texas. The company is also an affiliate of 3 energy suppliers that currently operate in Maryland: BGE Homes Product and Services, Constellation New Energy, Inc., and Constellation New Energy Gas Division, LLC. Staff reviewed the complaints filed against Breaker Box and its 3 affiliates during the time period of March 1st, 2019 to March 1st, 2020. Staff also provided additional information regarding the complaints filed against the affiliate companies operating in Maryland in its supplemental comments. Additionally, the company filed a modification to their application on March 3rd, 2020. This modification indicated that the company is only seeking authorization to serve commercial and industrial customers, not residential customers. Staff has reviewed the company's application and finds the information provided to be satisfactory. Staff recommends that the Commission grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker and aggregator services.
Thank you, Mr. Jang. Council or representative from Breaker Box.
Yeah, good morning, Chairman, Commissioner, staff. John Slocum here on behalf of Breaker Box and Constellation. There were some issues raised by the Consumer Affairs Division during the March 4th meeting. In light of those concerns, we have some folks here in attendance via Zoom or on the phone. Flossie Davis, Assistant General Counsel in our regulatory group, and Carrie Kramer, who is manager of our customer service operation, and then Craig Wilson, Vice President of our broker business, Breaker Box. So we sent a follow-up communication explaining the circumstances of the non-responsiveness and our corrective actions to date that were raised at that March 4th hearing. We're happy to address any further questions. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Counsel Flossie Davis for some initial comment.
Pardon the interjection, is Flossie the 860-992-3116? There we go.
Oh, hi. Sorry about that. I was speaking and didn't realize I was muted by you all. So thank you, John. And yes, as described in our letter submitted to the Commission, we did discover after last meeting what the issue was with respect to the lack of responsiveness the Consumer Affairs Division was experiencing, and we addressed that issue. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you'd like us to walk through what the issue was and how we addressed it, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. We took this item, your application, up at the March 4th, 2020 administrative meeting. The very following day, I believe, March, or maybe perhaps the day before, and I didn't realize this at the time, Breaker Box was not seeking and asking the Commission to remove the application as far as residential customers. Can you shed any light, if that is public, why you're no longer seeking to subscribe residential customers?
Well, we were, when the initial application was submitted, there was not an intent at that point to begin focusing on residential customers immediately at all. I think when they submitted the application initially, they were just trying to be efficient and thinking, okay, if we, may plan to do this in a few years down the line, we might as well request approval for that now. However, once we started getting a number of inquiries about a lot of detail related to complaints of addressed to affiliate businesses at the residential and all other levels. And when we spoke with staff about the reason for those inquiries, we were told it was because they thought that we were going to be focusing on residential for the broker business. And so we went back to the business and explained the issue and said, that if you're not going to focus on residential, let's not request that now, because it's, again, they're just beginning and they're planning on beginning at the commercial, industrial, and small business level, not at residential.
Well, Ms. Davis, thank you for that explanation. Thank you also for the clarification that Breaker Box put together and shared with us on March the 18th. That went a long way to addressing some of the concerns that I heard from staff counsel at the March 4th meeting in terms of non-responsiveness. And I understand the situation that has occurred, and looks like you put in contingencies to make sure that that does not occur again. So that addresses my issues with the application. Seeing Commissioner O'Donnell's ready to speak. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted to address the issue of complaints. I know that you're not seeking to serve residential customers now, but it's still worth, I believe, some discussion as it is raised in the staff's buck sheet on this issue. Some of the affiliate complaints have been slamming and in the state of Maryland. And that is something that I can speak for myself, not for the commission in this regard, but I have zero tolerance for. And I think it presents an existential threat to retail competition in the state of Maryland with regard to slamming. And I wanted to see if somebody wanted to speak from the company wanted to speak to the nature of those complaints and what you're doing. I know everybody has a bad actor, but I am of the mind that no small percentage is okay or acceptable or tolerable. So would the company like to address that and what you do to make sure you have quality control in the field with regard to our citizens and our customers?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Commissioner O'Donnell, we agree with you wholeheartedly on the seriousness of that issue, and I'll kick it to Council Flossie to address the nature of those complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. So what, now I know with respect to the specific complaints that were discussed last time, the ones where the commission was not, where Consumer Affairs Division was experiencing a lack of responsiveness on the part of Constellation. Those specific complaints, there were 5 of them, and 3 of them were, let's see, 2 of the 5 were from residential customers. Those 2, one of them was a dispute regarding an early termination fee, and that was actually based on a competitor sales agent that had made misrepresentations during the sale process. So we waived the early termination fee. And the second one was regarding contract renewal dates. So neither of those residential complaints were slamming, but let me explain what we do with complaints that we do receive on a more general level, so you understand the process. And then if you need further detail, that Carrie Kramer is on the phone and she can provide further detail. So in general, how we handle any complaints about misrepresentation or slamming in the sales process is, first we investigate the complaint. So in the case of a telesale, that means reviewing the third-party verification. And depending on the nature of the complaint, we'll also review the call recording because all of the calls are recorded. And if the recording or the third-party verification reveals any compliance concerns, we follow up with the vendor or the sales agent directly to determine whether, how we can address the problem. So there's some problems can be addressed through coaching or training. In some cases, we need to take corrective action, and that will take place. So in terms of either terminating the relationship with the vendor or with the sales agent. In the case of in-person sales, we're no longer we don't do any in-person sales or any door-to-door sales for residential customers. But we do, at least we used to, up until a few weeks ago, do door-to-door sales for small businesses. And in that case, we get a statement from the broker or the sales agent and review the documentation to investigate the customer claim. And again, in addition, if the broker or sales agent gets more than 2 complaints, regardless of whether, regardless of what they're saying, what their story is, we will, we follow up similarly as we do with telesales for coaching, training, or corrective action. So the company takes all complaints, no matter what small percentage of overall customers, very seriously, and works to determine the root cause and make sure that we can mitigate the chance of that happening in the future.
Okay, well, I appreciate that explanation. Do you know if any of your affiliates do kiosks, recruitment, or sidewalk kind of setup shop? Do you do any of that kind of stuff? We see some suppliers who do that. Maybe shopping
Currently,
shopping centers.
Obviously, currently we're not, but there in some markets, there have been some kiosk sales taking place. We do a thorough compliance analysis with those to make sure we have controls in place. So, for example, to make sure that we're compliant with the any in-person sales requirements, and that all of the materials provided to the customers are compliant with requirements. I honestly don't know off the top of my head right now if that was taking place in Maryland or not.
Fair enough. Let me just say, in regard to my reference to slamming, you've had a chance to look, I'm sure, at the staff's filing, their buck sheet, and it chronicles more than the 5 specific ones that you referred to, and some of them are slamming. And I just want the message to be sent that no toleration in this state for slamming, and we expect 100% adherence to the requirements of COMAR.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. I just had a question regarding Breaker Box's customer complaint management structure. Do you utilize Constellation, or as staff referred to it as the Breaker Box affiliates? Do you use their systems to respond to complaints, or does Breaker Box have its own separate infrastructure?
Oh, is that, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm having some coughing fits here. So Breaker Box has its own compliance program, but my understanding is they are using the Constellation infrastructure. We have to be very careful because we do have the business aspect of the 2 entities cordoned off, because the Breaker Box needs to be separate for purposes of, they need to be independent for purposes of various compliance requirements and also just to be acting as an independent broker. So a lot of that is firewalled off, but at certain levels. So for example, at the level of certain shared services, they are permitted to use permitted to use some of the Constellation infrastructure. So it's not, we have a firewall in place, but to the extent that they're able to leverage, okay, I'm sorry, I'm being corrected because I'm not actually full-time counsel for BreakerBox. So BreakerBox is completely separate and they are completely firewalled off. But they do have their own compliance program.
Okay, and for the commission staff in their original communication to the commission in this case, with Bakshi, they noted that the company had not completed its training and marketing materials for Maryland yet. Do you know what the status is of that work? Has it been completed now, or? And if it has been completed, does it incorporate instruction to your internal employees to make sure that complaints are responded to in a timely manner?
Good morning. Again, Michael Jang on behalf of staff. I have not received any updates as to whether the training and marketing materials have been completed or not at this moment.
Okay.
So there was a training. Go ahead, Craig.
Good morning, Commission. Commissioner Linton, to your question, we do an annual compliance training on the BreakerBox staff, and we did complete that in March, March 1st to be exact. We have not begun marketing in Maryland yet. Obviously, we don't have the license, so yeah, we haven't taken that step, but we're fully aware of the request to provide marketing materials prior to entering into the market, which would come after the license.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Linton. Obviously, on that last point, when you do have those materials available, please share them with the staff as we will direct in our motion at this point. At this point, I would propose that the Commission grant BreakerBox a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker and aggregator services for all customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. Direct the company to provide marketing materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff 30 days prior to utilization of the materials in Maryland. And finally, direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in its application. We'll begin with Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
And Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, item number 7 on today's agenda is a request from BGE to waive an affiliate regulation, COMAR 2040-0101B4 for the retail load shaping pilot. For this item for staff, we have Ben Baker and Michael Dean. For Constellation, we have Florence Davis, John Slocum, and for BGE, we have John Frayne, Beverly Sikora, and for OPC, Fred Hoover.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Benjamin Baker on behalf of staff. On February 18th, 2020, BGE filed a request of waiver from COMAR 2040-0201B4 for BGE to assist an affiliate company, Constellation, with marketing and advertising of the retail load shaping pilot program for PC 44. The retail load shaping pilot was authorized by the Commission on June 12, 2019 as an RFP, and the Commission directed BGE to accept Constellation's proposed bid with the exception that Constellation be limited in retaining customers recruited at the end of the pilot on December 5th, 2019. BGE has been in discussions with Constellation regarding the level of marketing support BGE would provide to Constellation based on Constellation's bid proposal. BGE has agreed to provide call center website, and email marketing support to Constellation for the pilot. None of the proposed scripts, banners, or wording has been developed at this time, though BGE will provide the actual messaging when it is available. BGE does not believe there will be incremental costs to provide this marketing support. COMAR 2040-02-01B4 prohibits a utility from engaging in promotions, marketing, or advertising with a core or non-core service affiliate. Staff recognizes the marketing request will help with customer recruitment for the pilot, but staff does not believe it is appropriate at this time to waive COMAR to allow joint marketing efforts. To best reflect a non-pilot environment, Constellation should first attempt to recruit the customers themselves. This type of marketing support would likely not be allowed for affiliates or would not be provided to a non-affiliate retail supplier outside of a pilot environment. Staff does support limited call center support for customers who contact BGE about the pilot, since it is a commission authorized pilot in BGE service territory, with the limitation that BGE may not transfer the customers to Constellation's call center. For this support to be allowed, a waiver of COMAR 2040-02-01C5 would be necessary, since the COMAR prohibits the utility from speaking or appearing to speak on behalf of its core service affiliate. Therefore, staff proposes the commission reject without prejudice BGE's request for waiver of COMAR 2040-02-01B4 for BGE's marketing the retail load shaping pilot on their website or in joint emails with Constellation. Authorize a waiver of COMAR 2040-02-01B4 and 2040-02-01C5 for BGE call center support discussed in BGE's February 18th, 2020 filing, with the modification that BGE's call center may not transfer customers to Constellation's call center. Finally, BGE and Constellation shall file all scripts, marketing materials, and displays that will be used by BGE on behalf of Constellation to market and acquire customers to participate in the retail load shaping pilot. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Would Office of People's Counsels wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, it's Fred Hoover on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. We did file a letter stating our concerns with the waiver request by BG&E and our support of the recommendations by staff for the limited granting of the waiver related to the call center, but not granting a waiver for the marketing. The only thing that I would add, in addition to what was in our comments, is a reference to the staff comments that were filed. And what I'm talking about is the confidential information describing the activities that Constellation and BG&E were going to engage in when it came to marketing. I'm not, because it's the confidential part of the staff comments, I'm not going to specifically reference what was discussed, but it's on pages 7 and 8 of the staff's comments. And it's those types of activities that actually raise the concerns that we have about unduly intertwining the efforts between Constellation and BG&E, and the fact that the Constellation is a competitive entity. We have concerns if it was any competitive entity, but it's a heightened concern because of the fact that they are both affiliates of Exelon. And so, it's our view that the marketing should be done just by Constellation. Constellation should have sufficient resources in order to market the program, and that the only support that BG&E should provide is the call center reference that was made in the original proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. Counsel for the utility.
Good morning, Commissioners. Beverly Sikora on behalf of BGE. Your Honors, BGE understands both positions. You know, we understand that staff is concerned about the precedent that this would set for future, participation in any sort of marketing effort by any supplier, much less an affiliate. But at the same time, we also understand Constellation's position that they spelled out in their proposal what they were looking for from us, and the Commission approved it. We want this to be a successful pilot. We think we have a lot to learn. BGE worked with Constellation to come up with options which we proposed that would help to make the pilot successful, but at the same time having a limited impact on BG's operations and costs. So, we're just trying at this time to help make the pilot be successful, but we do understand the concerns raised by staff.
Thank you, Ms. Sikora. Would a representative from Constellation wish to speak to this item? Seeing none.
Yes, hi.
We do have somebody.
Yes, hi, sorry, I had to be unmuted. Thank you, commissioners. This is Florence Davis again on behalf of Constellation. First, I do want to address the something that hasn't been discussed, which was the OPC's request to have the pilot suspended, or to have the start of the program suspended until sometime after the stay-at-home order has been lifted. Constellation completely agrees that that is a good idea. It's not a normal situation now, and the point of the pilot was to determine if we could, if consumer behavior could be affected in a more normal situation. So we are happy to have that start suspended. We would like, in the meantime, however, to have the waiver request addressed, just because we would want to begin to prepare marketing the product for when it is possible, and get those preparations in place now. And so with respect to the waiver request, as Beverly noted, Constellation is really just looking to be able to market the program in the manner that it described in its RFP response, with some modifications that have been worked out with BGE to make sure that BGE would not be incurring any incremental costs. That response was approved by the commission, and that's what we had planned for. If that is going to be changed, then we'll need to consider how we're going to move forward and attempt to market this without additional costs, and allocating the funds in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Looking at the recent history of this application and filing that Constellation made back last year, it noted at the outset that it would be relying on non-cost support from BGE to effectuate enrollment of customers throughout the pilot. And I believe that when the commission accepted that proposal in concept generally, that in effect, it was acknowledging that a waiver at some point in the future would need to be made. I understand and respect both staff position and OPC's concern here. And in now having the chance to review the specifics in terms of direct web links, emails, and call center scripts, and transferring the phone calls, I am largely comfortable with the BGE program. I believe that the state of Maryland and its customers, in learning the results of this pilot, will be better off for it. Although I do agree with everybody that I've heard from so far in this case that because of COVID, we would need to move back the start of this if we were going to have EM and V results that are meaningful. The area I did have concern with is the call center, and the fact that there would be a direct connection and transfer of calls from BGE to Constellation. I don't have a concern with the BGE representative acknowledging that such a program exists and providing a number, perhaps a 1-800 number for the customer to contact. But a direct transfer from one utility to Constellation it's a little too close and cozy for me. So I would grant the application. I want to hear what the other commissioners' questions are, if any, but I would grant the application with the condition that there is no direct transfer of the call from the BGE call center to Constellation. I turn to my commissioners now. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some questions for staff and then maybe for Constellation or BG&E. So staff has recommended that these waivers, the specific portions of the waivers that you want to deny, be without prejudice. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm thinking that the reason is, should the recruitment process not go swimmingly, that then a good case could be made or a good cause could be shown at that time to consider these waivers before we dive right in and waive these affiliate items out of the gate when we haven't really demonstrated that the recruitment can't be done adequately by Constellation. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The RFP response that the commission approved, did it contain all that classified personal identifying information in it when we approved it?
Sorry, the responses they gave to you, did they make you aware of these types of requests were going to be made? Yes, I believe they did, and BGE also is very forthcoming throughout when that they would need a waiver of COMAR.
Wait
if
a
they
minute.
were. Sorry.
I'm specifically
maybe I
talking
had
about the specific information in the confidential portion. I'm not going to open up the confidential discussion, so I can't identify it here. But
okay.
Did they say we are going to ask for this specific information in the confidential portion? Because I don't think they did. I think they generalize in the response. So maybe someone else can answer this question. But
I'll let Constellation. I would need to re-look at the bid really quick, but I'll let Constellation speak if they've directly asked for these.
The reason I'm pretty sure that it wasn't there is because I don't think I ever would have approved that. I'm fairly certain I would not have approved that. So Constellation, can you respond to that?
So, I mean, I have the response in front of me and the confidential response, and I don't know if you have it available at all, but
I'm talking about the not the filing that we have before us now. I'm talking about the response to the RFP.
Correct. I have the response to the RFP in front of me. And I mean, if you're talking about, and again, I won't get into detail, but if you're talking about, was there a request that the BGE utility market this program to its customers and a list of ways that it would do that? Yes, that is included.
I'm specifically talking about the information, the specific customer information that would be required, contained in the.
We're not getting that customer information. Yeah, we're not getting that customer information from BGE for purposes of the marketing. I mean, that's the point of using the BG, having our marketing have a link on their site, and then also to include some of our information in the more specific.
Yeah, so here's my concern, that information is going to be shared without the affirmative approval of the customer. It's going to go from the utility to the Constellation without the customer having signed off on that. And I got a big concern about it.
I'm sorry, and just respectfully, I think you misunderstand, because the information.
Maybe I do, and that's why I'm asking the question. So I hope you can help enlighten me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that nothing that we've described includes that I'm aware of, and I don't know if Beverly knows any differently, but nothing that we've described includes information being shared from the utility to Constellation.
I'm having a difficult time, Mr. Chairman, having this line of questioning without being able to talk about the information we're talking about here, because it's confidential and we haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. So it's frustrating on my part because I can't get into what I'm talking about here.
Commissioner O'Donnell, if it appears that there's some miscommunication with the Constellation representative, if I may, and this may not be your question, but let me attempt to rephrase in more simple terms for Constellation. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner O'Donnell. Ms. Davis, I believe the commissioner was trying to ask whether or not confidential information regarding customers will be shared between Constellation and BGE. Is that something you could tell us? And Commissioner O'Donnell, if that's not your question.
Well, it is my question, Mr. Chairman, because I think that's what I read in the confidential version of the filings.
Okay. So that's that question, Ms. Davis. Are you prepared to answer?
Yes, and again, based on my understanding of the agreement between what we had discussed between the parties, that was not going to be happening. So that's why I'm a little confused about, what portion is being read that way. So my apologies.
Well, you need not be confused. If that's the company's position, that's the company's position that there will be no sharing of information between.
Let me try with staff. Let me try with staff again then. What is the purpose in the confidential filing of that confidential information? Why is it in the filing?
The portion at the very end, and 7 and 8, pages 7 and 8.
I don't have it before me, so yes, but it's what gets the customer specific data.
Right, that was provided, that was the summary of what Constellation provided in their follow-up response to your questions on the RFP. That was provided because we did not have information on what would be going into this messaging. So this was this was basically a summary of what they had originally been requesting. But my understanding since then, or sorry, not since then, but with BGE's current request is that the only things that have been agreed upon that BGE will do or give to Constellation is what is before us. I have a data request saying that that no additional information or marketing will be done on behalf of Constellation other than what was detailed in their filing to us at this time.
All right. Well,
Beverly, go ahead.
I appreciate that. It's confusing enough for me, and I'm not sure that the answer is adequate for me. So I'm going to be supportive, Mr. Chairman, of the staff's recommendation. I know that may not be where we're heading, but I have a large concern about the unclarity of that information and how it's going to be shared and what's going to be shared. For Constellation, let me just say this, and for BG&E, I have concerns about co-branding. In other words, a link on BG&E's website has Constellation. That concerns me, and we're looking to waive that for affiliates that maybe we wouldn't approve for other specific suppliers, but there's an affiliate relationship here that really concerns me. Could you address that for me? Either the utility or Constellation. I prefer the utility, I think.
Your Honor, this is, well, first of all, addressing your question, going back to the confidential customer information, the BGE was never asked, and there's been no discussion that we would be providing any customer specific information to Constellation. They would certainly, to the extent they signed up customers to participate in the pilot, they would receive the information that they would receive about any customer that they were signing up to supply electricity to. So again, BGE will not be providing any customer information to Constellation before they sign a customer up to participate. And again, then it would simply be the information that they would normally get, usage and that kind of stuff. About the co-branding, BGE already includes on its websites information about all suppliers. And so there is, to some extent, co-branding with a variety of entities. In this case, Constellation chose to participate in the RFP. The commission approved it. And so, to me, it's they're under a, we're not doing this because they're our affiliate. We're doing it because they are an entity that the commission approved to be, holding a pilot. If we were to deny this simply because they're an affiliate, where we would approve it for if someone else, another supplier, had chosen to participate in the RFP and then the commission approved it, it seems like, Constellation is being punished simply because of the relationship, when, again, they're not going to be getting anything different than any other affiliate or any other entity that might be providing services to customers. We do understand staff's concerns about the idea, and we've had this discussion on, many other occasions, that typically when you do have a pilot, you try to have the pilot be designed in the same manner that it would be if it wasn't a pilot, if it was real life. And so, by doing this, when we may not be doing it, if, say, everybody started offering different things, that could skew the results. But, the affiliate relationship, I think, is a bit of less of a concern, because, again, the commission, approved this pilot and they approved Constellation's participation. But again, I repeat that Constellation will not be getting any customer confidential information ahead of time.
Okay, I appreciate that response, and there may even be a point where I would be supportive of this. I think it may be a bit premature for me anyway, because it's murky enough. But staff is recommending we not approve portions of these waivers without prejudice, and because it acknowledges some of the arguments that you're making, Mr. Secor. So I do appreciate that. And I may be convinced later to be supportive of something other than staff's recommendations, but OPC and staff are both making pretty strong, compelling cases that not to do this now is premature, because good cause hasn't been demonstrated through the lack of recruitment process hasn't even started yet. So having said that, I guess I'm done, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, everybody, for being here and working through this. Mr. Baker, I have a question. What's your response to the Constellation argument that all of this was already included in the application, and BGE, had already said we're likely to have waivers and that sort of thing? So your waiver is very, very limited, just to, you would only grant allowing them to take a phone call. And of course, it's a BGE pilot. So, the pilot is associated in the BGE service territory. So obviously somebody might call BGE. What is your justification when the application and the RFP included these kinds of concepts that this was going to happen?
And I agree. I think we were also trying to figure that out. And I think where we landed is that since it was accepted, but no waiver was granted at the time, that it was not clear that on that subject, I guess, in terms of, because BG had in their filings indicated we will need a waiver of COMAR to do this. And so by accepting it, if you believe that is, by accepting it, that you have already then granted this, except for just in, I guess, the official granting of the waiver. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the binding of the RFP on that portion, but they would not be able to do that portion of the RFP without a waiver of COMAR. So yes, I believe that was present through up when it was granted. Maybe not all the specifics, but I believe that it was I believe it was, having read through everything, that a number of these issues were raised.
Okay, thanks. And Mr. Hoover, you are a lawyer. Perhaps you'd like to weigh in on that question as well.
Well, I think that the concern that we had was, and I wasn't around when this originally was done, but our concern is when we looked at the specifics, and again, I'm sort of referring to what was in the confidential portion of the staff's comments, it seemed to us that that was a fairly intricate interweaving of both Constellation and BG&E, and given customers sort of general knowledge of what's going on when it comes to competitive supply situations, it was our concern that this was going to be unduly confusing to them, even though it's being done for this pilot purpose. And so, our thought was that this marketing should be limited and only providing, very high level information about the fact that this pilot exists, and get into more specifics that the incentives for it and things like that should only be provided by Constellation. Now, I guess in an alternative, our thought would be, if we get a chance to sort of see the specifics of the scripts and all of the messaging and things like that, maybe there's a middle ground to sort of fix this situation. But I guess our concern is granting a waiver before you've seen the specific language of the emails, of the information on the website, is just a bridge too far for us.
Mm-hmm. And what would be your position if instead of Constellation having won this bid, but the commission had accepted a bid from Magathy Energy Supply Company? What would be your response? Would you have a similar concern?
Well, actually, in our letter, we mentioned the fact that we would have same concerns if this was a different entity. Our example was Acme competitive supply situation. But the same thing of providing support to a competitive entity would raise concerns on our part. I guess the difference is it's heightened because of the affiliate nature of Constellation and BG&E, but we would have the same sort of co-branding concerns of any action on the part of the utility supporting a competitive entity.
But Mr. Hoover, we're talking here about an affiliate waiver. We're not talking about we're not talking here, we're talking about the affiliate rules, and the commission already approved a concept, and that concept included some of these, very actions that are the subject of the request. So, again, how do you get past the fact that the commission already approved this?
Well, again, our concern is just the general ones of not having the utility provide assistance, since the utility is ratepayer funded, having the utility provide assistance to competitive entities, even in the context of these commission approved pilots in this area.
And even if there's no cost associated with it?
Well, while there's no cost to it, there is a cost in the sense of the confusion on the part of customers between the various entities involved in this situation. When Maryland moved to deregulation, there was this separation of competitive supply situations and the local distribution utility. And so that's why that situation was set up, so that we have the separate entities.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoover. Mr. Chairman, I would agree with your proposal that we accept the waivers with the exception of the direct transfer. Historically, that's been a challenge from way back when, with utility affiliates doing a direct phone transfer. So I would concur with your motion when we get around to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to repeat everything that's been said already. I agree with the chairman. I believe that we already implied that there would be waivers when we accepted the RFP. I think it's important for the success of this program. I did want to ask a question, though, about this concept that it's not likely, though, that we would accept, or it'd be similarly, we would accept an affiliate, working relationship with the utility. And in some cases, I guess this is for staff, isn't it unavoidable to make this type of a program work, a time of use load shaping program work, that there would possibly be working relationships between a supplier and a utility? And that's again for staff. I mean, does that, I just want to leave hanging out there that we would never consider a proposal that might involve a working relationship.
So I don't want to, for pilot purposes, Commissioner Richard.
And Mr. Baker, if you could hold your response to Commissioner Richard. We lost Commissioner O'Donnell. I'd like to bring him back so he could hear. Well, why don't we take a brief 5-minute adjournment? We will reconvene at 11:10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appears we're still waiting for Commissioner O'Donnell to join, so please bear with us for a minute longer. All right, it looks like we have Commissioner O'Donnell joining us now by phone. Commissioner, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, there we go. All right, we're back and up and running. Commissioner Richard, for Commissioner O'Donnell's benefit, can you restate your question to staff?
Sure, I'm not sure we lost him, but as I mentioned, I am supportive of the chairman, and that I believe that we had already, when we accepted the RFP, had assumed that these waivers were coming and had accepted them as well. But one of the points the staff had raised in their buck sheet is this idea that it's unlikely that we would consider a non-affiliate working with the utility. And I was just concerned with that notion because, I mean, in many cases, I think the best programs would have a good cooperative relationship between the supplier and the distribution utility. So I just wanted to ask about that. I mean, it's a lot of the outcomes we're looking for with time of use and load shaping, also support and power objectives. So isn't it very likely that we might consider a non-affiliate program working with a distribution utility?
And Commissioner, I just wanted to clarify, are you asking from a pilot perspective or from full deployment?
Well, if it had been suggested in a pilot or for full deployment.
So I was making that comment from a marketing perspective and coming from thinking about it from the retail supplier perspective, less from, I guess, thinking about other non-affiliate or affiliates in other programs we run or that have been run. But I think what we were saying that there was I don't understand, or I shouldn't say not don't understand. We think it would be less likely in full deployment for a non-affiliate and the utility, a non-affiliate supplier and the utility to engage in this kind of marketing behavior where the utility would be marketing marketing a supplier's program, like sending the marketing material directly to their customers, putting it on their website, their call center, talking about the products. So I think those were what we were saying is we don't think that is what you would see in a full deployment program. In a pilot with a non-affiliate where you're trying to retain customer or where you're trying to get customers signed up for a program to study it, those are all things that I think you would see, or not would see, but I think we would have less concern about from a non-affiliate perspective. I mean, but our comment still stands though because we don't think that this would occur outside of a pilot, or I shouldn't say not occur. We think that it was less likely to occur outside of a pilot, that you're not really reflecting full deployment. But that's where we were coming from. It was from the marketing of the program.
Okay, well, because it was out there, I just want to say, at least as one commissioner, I would be completely open to that kind of relationship or kind of a marketing working relationship. And I think it could come in the form of possibly a power program or another type of RFP. So I just wanted to at least put that out there, since that was in the staff buck sheet, that it was unlikely, because I think it might even be a good idea, whether it's affiliate or non-affiliate, to consider that. So again, I don't want to go back over what's already been discussed, but I did want to ask one question about the phone transfer. And I support where the chairman is going, but I just wanted to press a little bit on this point. In this particular pilot, we're talking about an instance where there's not a competitor. So there's not a risk necessarily that like if someone were to call for get the refrigerator repaired and they're gonna send them right to BGE home. Here, we're trying to look at the success of the program, and there's only one participant in this program. So just as a customer service, trying to help people get, signed up for this, why would we want to, restrict, tie our own hands, if you were, in trying to see the follow through with a phone transfer? For staff, I mean.
Sorry. So why would we, I mean, this is once again, the affiliate relationship and then sharing the customers back and forth, not, sorry.
I get that, but in this case, there's not a competitor we're worrying about. I mean, if this were a non-affiliate, would there be a concern with BG sending it to,
I don't think there would be. Once again, this goes back to the non-pilot environment. I know you disagree with us, and I'm not going to, or yes, I know I understand you disagree that that we on our position that this would not occur outside of a non-pilot environment. So from a non-affiliate perspective, it would make sense. I guess the question is for BGE, would they consider setting up such a program in a full deployment scenario for their retail suppliers?
Okay. Well, I think a pilot or non-pilot, I think if you had the ability to get the customer, the potential customer to the, to successfully signing up, that would be, in the public interest for the state, because we're trying to promote these types of time of use, load shaping, and all the benefits that would come out of that for the system. So, and in any case, again, I support where the chairman is going, but if there were others who would want to go further and say, yes, we would also allow the transfer, I would welcome that as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this point, I see Commissioner Linton has raised his hand. Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to note that I was also supportive of the chairman of your motion. I think this is these waivers are something that at least I was expecting to come forth from the companies at some point in the future. And there is a bit of information sharing going on already, especially on the utility company's website. So I think this is the next logical step for the pilot program. So I don't have any questions. I just wanted to note my support for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Linton. Before I make a motion, I would like to note that the company did state that it would suspend the actual start of the pilot, and that makes a lot of sense. And I would ask that Constellation be in touch with staff regarding when the timing is, how long we're going to delay. Obviously, at this point in the situation, you probably don't know when you plan to start. But when we return to blue skies, please keep staff informed. At this point, I will make a motion. I move that we grant BGE's request for waiver of COMAR 20.40.2.1B4 for BGE marketing the retail load shaping pilot on its website or in joint emails with Constellation. That we authorize a waiver of COMAR 20.40.2.1B4 and 20.40.2.1C5 for all BGE call center supported discussed in BGE's February 18, 2020 filing, with the modification that BGE's call center may not transfer customers to Constellation's call center. And finally, we direct BGE and Constellation to file all scripts, marketing materials, and displays that will be used by BGE on behalf of Constellation to market and acquire customers to participate in the retail load shaping pilot. We begin the vote with Commissioner Richard.
Yes, can I just ask for one clarification? So in the script, would we allow at least BGE Transfer Center to provide the number to Constellation? We're not going as far as restricting all kind of.
No.
There's another.
As I noted earlier, it would be appropriate for them to share the 1-800 number with the customer.
Terrific. Okay, good. With that, I vote aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Oh, Commissioner O'Donnell, we hear you, but it's very low. Can you speak up?
I can, I'm holler. Does that help?
That's better, yes. Still rather faint.
Let me try this. Does that help?
Oh, that's 10 times better. Yes, we could hear you.
Okay. I was seeking recognition before the motion was made because I wanted to ask a follow-up question, but I couldn't get anybody's attention, so I apologize.
Okay.
Can I ask it now?
Yes, yeah, you have the floor.
So to staff, I wanted to follow up. Could you acknowledge that the RFP, the Constellation submitted, did intend for a waiver? Is that correct?
Mr. Baker?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. I was being rejoined, so I missed your question. Can you please repeat?
Yes, I can. So my question is, you seem to acknowledge that the RFP, the response the Constellation submitted indicated they would need a waiver. Is that correct?
Not from Constellation. BGE had indicated that they would need a waiver. So when they were filing their comments on Constellation's write-ups, they had indicated they would need waivers.
Okay. But did they specify which specific waivers of COMAR would be required, which specific provisions?
I would have to double check, but I believe it was 2040-0201B4. It was not their original request did not include the 2040-0201C5. That was a staff addition at a later time.
Okay. So it seems to me that we may have approved the RFP, but I don't think we pre-decisioned any waiver we might grant or what might be requested or the breadth or scope of that. Is that correct? It seems to be indicated in this discussion today that we pre-decisioned the request for waiver. I don't think we did. And I don't think it was specific enough that we could have even entertained doing such.
And that's why staff submitted the comments it did. Since it was not stated in the official acceptance, staff did not. No, we weren't going to presuppose you had, but if the commissioners and commission decides that they had, then obviously we did include in our write-up a recommendation that would improve everything. But yes, we didn't want to make that presumption.
All right. Well, I needed to ask that because I'm about ready to vote, and I wanted to clarify that. Mr. Chairman, my vote is no on the motion. I am supportive of staff and OPC's position on this without prejudice. And once a full showing of good cause for waiving is shown after recruitment doesn't go as well as it could, then I may be supportive at that time, but I can't support it at this time. There's too many questions, too many concerns I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Commissioner Linton.
I'm supportive. Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion carries with Commissioner O'Donnell dissenting. Mr. Secretary, the next item, please.
Mr. Chairman, item number 8 is a proposed tariff revision from BGE to implement electric vehicle only time of use rates. For staff, we have Drew McAuliffe and Annette Garofalo. For BGE, we have Dan Herson, John Frayne, Christy Fleischman. For OPC, we have Fred Hoover. For the EV advisors, we have Michael Krauthammer. And for the Electric Vehicle Association of Greater Washington, D.C., Bob Erdman.
Thank you. Good morning, staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. On February 21st, 2020.
Mr. McAuliffe, your volume, is it possible to raise? I think folks are having trouble hearing.
Sure. Is that better?
Not much.
Let me see. Seemed to work fine the other day. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, that's terrific. Yes.
I think it was the headphones. My apologies. On February 21st, 2020, Baltimore Gas and Electric filed Supplement 644 to Rider 6 Vehicle Charging Time of Use VCTOU Adjustment Program. In Order 88997 in Case 9478, Baltimore Gas and Electric was ordered to offer an electric vehicle only time of use rate for standard offer service customers who own an electric vehicle. BGE currently offers a whole house time of use supply rate for EV owners, Schedule EV. BGE's proposal will use the same time of use rates offered to Schedule EV customers to the VCTOU customers limited to their EV charging usage. The VCTOU customers must be on Schedule R and own a qualified EV charger in order to qualify for the rate. BGE will provide an adjustment on each customer's bill for only the EV charging usage. This adjustment will show the kilowatt-hour usage for EV charging for on and off peak periods and apply the appropriate adjustment to the current Schedule R rate for EV charging usage to calculate the customer's bill. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the filing with an effective date of May 1st, 2020. Additionally, staff recommends that the Commission require BGE to provide the revenue collected through Rider 6, as well as the total energy for cost for Rider 6 customers. Average monthly savings must also be collected of customers enrolled in Rider 6 and residential charging data for Rider 6 customers, semi-annual electric vehicle pilot reports.
Thank you, Mr. McAuliffe. Counsel for BGE. Oh, Mr. Hurston, I believe you're muted. There you go.
Okay, I think I just got unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Dan Hurston for Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. And I think we also have on the call Christy Fleischman-Gronke, who's our manager of strategic programs and runs our EV Smart program, and John Frayne, our director of regulatory strategy and revenue policy, who heads up our rates department. I don't have a formal presentation this morning, but I will say we're bringing this EV only time of use offering to the Commission for approval. The idea of the time of use rate for the EV charger usage only was first developed through the EV work group and was included in the January 2018 EV portfolio that was presented to the Commission for approval. And in the Commission's January 2019 order, they approved this concept and directed BGE to file the proposal, which is what we have before you today. I can say we're excited about this proposal and to get this approved and begin offering it to our customers because we know there are customers out there who want to save money and reduce any grid impact from their EV charging, but they may not be able to do it by shifting all their premises electric load to off-peak hours. So the ability to just shift the EV charging usage to off-peak hours time periods we think is a good development. So we respectfully request approval of the proposal, and myself, Ms. Fleischman-Gronke, Mr. Frayne are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurston. Do any other party to this case wish to seek recognition? Seeing none and seeing no commissioners asking any questions, I will take a motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have one question. I was a little late getting to the microphone. I had a question for BGE. In your original proposal, you wanted to begin marketing in April of this year, which obviously is today. In light of the current circumstances we find ourselves in, are you still looking to move forward on April 1st and moving forward with the effective date for May 1st, or is that calendar need to be changed?
I think we are still looking for an effective date of May 1st. I'll defer to Ms. Fleischman-Gronke regarding our marketing efforts. Christy, are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Good morning, commissioners. Christy Fleischman-Gronke with BGE. We will be delaying marketing for a bit, given the COVID-19 current situation. We plan to start marketing this mid-May. So we'll be marketing the rebate program and the time of use rate together. So adding on the benefits that you can receive the rebate plus additional savings from being enrolled on the time of use rate. We will reach out to all the customers currently enrolled on the whole house, EV whole house time of use rate, as well as any customers that received the rebate. Customers that did not apply for a rebate, perhaps they bought a smart level 2 charger prior to our rebate program, are also eligible. So we'll be directly marketing to all 6,000 customers that we know have EVs, as well as continuing our general marketing campaigns in mid-May for both the rebate program and the time of use rate.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you. Any additional questions? At this point, we will take a motion. Motion is to accept the tariff pages for filing with an effective date of May 1st, 2020. Direct the company to provide the revenue collected through Rider 6, as well as the total cost of energy for Rider 6 customers, average monthly savings of customers enrolled in Rider 6, and residential charging date for Rider 6 customers in its semi-annual electric vehicle pilot reports. The vote begins with Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion is approved. Thank you. The next item, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, item number 9 is the request of WGL to approve the Census R275 residential diaphragm meter. For staff, we have Michael Dean and Mikhail Spiegelman. For Washington Gas, we have John Dodge. And for OPC, we have Joe Cleaver.
Thank you. Good morning, staff.
This is Michael Dean on behalf of staff. This item is a filing by Washington Gas Light Company requesting approval to use the Census R275 residential diaphragm meter in gas service for billing purposes. Public Utilities Section 7-301A and Commission regulations require prior Commission approval of meters before they are placed in service for billing. Staff has reviewed the test data for this meter, and as discussed in the staff comments, found the meter meets the requirements for use in service. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the Census R275 meter. If approved, staff will update the list of approved meters listed on the PSC website. The Office of People's Counsel filed comments mail log number 229401 expressing a concern in the replacement of existing meters. However, the item before the Commission concerns the approval of the meter for use in service and not a replacement program. If the company undertakes a program to replace meters, the prudency of this would be reviewed in a rate case. Annual tests in the in-service performance testing program would also indicate if there was sufficient concern to justify a wholesale replacement program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Joseph Cleaver on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. Your Honor, as we noted in the letter that we filed, one concern that we had was based on the statement in the company's filing that it was retiring the legacy stock of the previous model, the Rockwell model, and that there were diaphragm shrinkage issues with the model resulting in fast meters. That gave rise to a question in my mind as to whether in connection with this request, the company was somehow notifying the Commission of a meter replacement program or seeking authorization for that. As I noted in the letter, I spoke to the company's counsel. Mr. Dodge confirmed that with this filing, the utility is not seeking to either notify the Commission or seek Commission approval of a meter replacement program, that the Commission's approval of this request will not impact the company's pace of replacement or current meter replacement activities, and that approximately 3,000 Rockwell meters will be replaced with census meters each year. The company didn't commit to that request. One second, Your Honor, I'm getting a message here. Here I am. The company didn't commit to that level of meter replacement, and that is just an estimate, but the company made clear that that's the level of meter replacement that would occur in the normal course. As I noted in the letter, provided that the company supplements its filing with statements on the record today at the administrative meeting confirming that there's no meter replacement program involved with this filing, OPC does not oppose the request and would recommend that it be approved by the commission. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. I suspect we'll receive your verbal confirmation in a moment from counsel for WGL. Good morning, Mr. Dodge.
I hope.
Oh, Mr. Dodge, there you go.
All right, am I on?
You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good morning. Let me start by saying it is very good to see everybody. It's been too long, and hopefully we can gather again in person soon. I'm happy to confirm OPC's understanding that this is a simple meter approval, not a meter replacement program. And I also agree with Mr. Dean's characterization of how we would have to go about obtaining commission approval for a specific meter approval program, and the prudency would be taken up in a rate case. With that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions the commission may have.
Thank you, and I trust that satisfies Mr. Cleaver. Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, everyone. I have a question for Mr. Dodge. Since you traveled all this way to be here with us this morning, I figured I should ask you something. Wanted to make sure that the current Rockwell 275 meters are still, to the company's knowledge, still operating effectively and efficiently. And that this new meter is just the latest new model that just came out and has to be approved by the commission in the normal course.
Yes, Commissioner, to both of your questions, the current meter is operating well. As Mr. Cleaver noted in his letter and this morning, there are some shrinkage issues with this meter's diaphragm and all of our diaphragm meters. And when we detect that, or when we have a customer inquiry about a billing question, we automatically make the check of the diaphragm to make sure that the meter is operating within the COMAR band of acceptance for meter readings. This is simply another meter in our suite of meters that we use to replace older meters.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
If there are no additional questions, I will take a motion, and it's very fitting today. Today is the once in a decade census day, April 1st. So I move that we approve the census R272 meter. The vote begins with Commissioner Richard.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
I'm sorry, just I wanted to confirm, is this a 272 or 275?
Mr. Dean, can you confirm? Let's see. Pull it up. Oh, yeah, there is a discrepancy between 272 and 275. I believe it is 275. Okay. Mr. Dodge, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Mr. Dodge is gone. No, it is 275.
I was on mute again. The program keeps clipping in and out, but it is R-275.
Thank you. So I'll restate the motion. Approve the census R275 meter. Thanks for the catch, Commissioner Linton. Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion is approved. Mr. Secretary, the final item for today.
Mr. Chairman, item 10 concerns staff's report on the supplemental 2019 to 2020 procurement improvement process and the upcoming standard offers service auctions. For staff, we have Lloyd Spivak. For Potomac Edison, we have Jeff Trout and Robert Weeping. For PEPCO, we have Matt Seegers and Daniel Tudor. For BGE, Bev Sikora and David Bloom. For OPC, Bill Fields, and finally for Bates White, Frank Mossberg.
Thank you. And just a general reminder, everybody who signed up through Zoom, as you're called up to present, you may have to turn on your camera. Otherwise, we don't see you. You see us, but we don't see you. We'll begin with Mr. Spivak.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. Item number 10 is the Supplemental Procurement Improvement Process Report filed by staff on March 4th to address the uncertainty regarding what the PJM market capacity price will be for the last several months of some of the contracts to be bid in the upcoming SOS bids. To address this issue, staff convened a supplemental procurement improvement process in January and consulted a diverse group of stakeholders. The parties ultimately arrived at a recommendation under which a proxy capacity price would be applied to the relevant portion of the bids, although suppliers would ultimately be reimbursed or charged the difference between the proxy price and the market price that will eventually be determined. The recommendation in the report was to conduct the bidding on the first of two alternative bid dates that were approved by the Commission in the original procurement improvement process filing for this bid year. However, in the interim, since staff filed the supplemental report, the coronavirus pandemic has made it impractical to conduct the bidding in the usual manner in a closed bid room. Accordingly, last week, after consulting with staff and the Commission SOS consultant, the utilities filed a proposal to conduct the bidding online and recommended that the bid date be moved back to the second of the two bid dates that were originally proposed, which would be Monday, April 27th. OPC has filed a letter indicating that it has some concerns regarding the security and monitoring of such an online bidding construct. However, staff recommends the Commission adopt the proposals contained in the Supplemental Procurement Improvement Process Report filed on March 4th as modified by the utility proposals filed on March 26, 2020. The utilities, OPC, staff, and the Commission's SOS bid consultant are available to discuss the proposals and respond to the Commission's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. We'll next turn to Office of People's Counsel. Mr. Fields, it looks like you're in a reinforced underground bunker.
Yeah, I am. Are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Yes, OPC filed a letter on this matter. We are in agreement with the recommendations in the PIP proposal regarding using a proxy price for the capacity price. We're also in agreement with the proposal to delay the procurement until the reserve tranche date later in April to allow for some of these preparations to be made. The concern that we raised in the letter was in the normal, the way these procurements have always happened is that the bid monitor is physically in the room with the utility personnel carrying out the bid. That, of course, allows for better communication between the bid monitor and the utility personnel. But it also, another function of that is to allow the bid monitor to observe whether there is any communication happening from within the bid room to outside of the bid room that shouldn't be happening. And the utility letter that was filed didn't address those concerns. It talked about having a Zoom call, I think, similar to what we're having here. And what OPC recommends is that there be further discussions. We have had some discussions in the meantime since OPC filed its letter. We recommend further discussions and further investigation by the utilities to determine if there's a way that not only could you have a video, face-to-face video conference happening during the bid window, but also if there's a way that the bid monitor personnel could monitor and observe the screens of the utility personnel who are conducting the procurement. So, we certainly understand that, accommodations need to be made, and what exactly is technically feasible, I don't think we know right now. Certainly there are, possibilities that could be sorted out over the next few weeks before this happens. However, we believe that it's worth the effort to try to establish as much security and oversight of this process as we can, and make it as close as we can to what normally is done in these types of procurements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. That's obviously a very important note. Let's turn next to the bid monitor himself, Mr. Mossberg, and perhaps you could respond to Mr. Fields, and then we'll hear from the utilities.
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon at this point, everyone. This is Frank Mossberg with Bates White. Yeah, I think, obviously this is all still up in the air. If you grant the delay, we'll have almost a month to figure everything out. We share Mr. Fields' view that we would like to, keep things as much, given the tools we have and the situation we're in, we'd like to be as much as we would in a normal bid day. I do think already we'll have some things that will give us a lot of comfort. Number one, first and foremost, is that we will have access, as we always do, to the bidding platform so that we can independently review the bids as they come in and check them for conformance and check them, check who's the winner and who are the winning prices. And we can determine that independently. So that's really important. We'll still be able to do that. We've talked a little bit already with the utilities, but we should have the audio ability so we can listen to discussions amongst the utility personnel, as well as with any, should they have a technical question, we can listen and monitor that call. So that's something we normally do, and that's really important. And hopefully, my hope is we can also have a similar to a Zoom type call like we're having right now. So at a minimum, we can look and see what's happening and what people are doing. And those all kind of mirror things that we're normally doing. The screen sharing is something that would be nice to have, but frankly is lower on the hierarchy of needs. My primary thing is getting that bid view. Certainly, if it can be worked out, that would be nice. Typically in a bid room, you can only keep your eye on so many things at once. Our main focus is on the bidding platform. Obviously, if we see something suspicious, we can ask and say, hey, let's take a look at your screen. That's not a power that we use very often. And so if it's technically feasible for some sharing, sure, that would be good. But I think that we can work out a feasible solution, especially given the constraints that we're all under.
Thank you, Mr. Mossberg. At this point, would any of the utilities wish to speak? If not, do commissioners have any questions? Well, I do think we have some time to figure out how we protect the bid process. So Mr. Fields, your points are well taken. I trust that Mr. Mossberg and yourself and all the utilities will work closely together to make sure that that the sanctity of this process is maintained and there's no problems with the integrity going forward. So please keep, our staff will be in the loop. And to the extent there is any issues or problems before, a filing should be made with the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions before we move forward.
Yes, Commissioner Herman.
Thank you. I'm a little confused, and I'm not sure who can help me, but I'm a little confused what it is we're approving here with respect to the proxy price, because the materials say that you're proposing to use something like New Jersey, and you provide that New Jersey formula. My question is that the formula you're going to use? And my second question is, what average are you using? Because there's a number of prices we could use. Is it the prices people have been paying or the prices from the most recent round, that sort of thing. So I wanted to understand what the average, just clarify for me what the average is, and also whether or not we're approving this New Jersey formula, or you're asking for some other formula, or you're going to come forward later with a different formula?
If I might start off, Commissioner, I think actually what you're approving is the specific language that is in the draft model RFP and FSA that's appended to staff's filing. So, and that does include the specific formula, which does also follow the formula that was used in New Jersey. I believe it describes the specific averages that we're going to be using.
Okay. If somebody could refresh me on what that is, if you know.
Yeah, Commissioner Herman, it's Bob Reaping from Potomac Edison. So what we'll be doing, we'll be taking the base residual auction results for the applicable zones, whether it's the APS, BG&E, DP&L, or PEPCO zones, for the 2020-2021 planning year and the 2021-2022 planning year. We'll be adding those two together, dividing by 2, and then multiplying by 0.9. So it would be the results of the base residual auction for the 2 previous planning years, divided by 2 again, and then multiplied by 0.9, which would give you the value. I have those values in front of me here for the APS zone for Potomac Edison.
Mr. Reaping, that's okay. I just wanted to understand precisely what it was, because the material said we were using something like New Jersey, but in fact, we're using the same form.
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mossberg, I had some questions for you. How long has it been since we brought Bates White back?
So our first procurement was in October.
Okay. If I recall, we had to clarify after that tranche that we expected, the expectation was that Bates White stayed in the room until all bid confirmations and all activities were completed. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So in this case, and you know, I have a general concern. I've had a concern about ex parte communications in this process long before Bates White came on board. So it's not Bates White I'm concerned with. And I'm not concerned with our incumbents. I think our utilities are wonderful. I think they do a good job, and I think everybody intends to do this correctly. I believe that. But as a policymaker of long-term, 20-some years plus, almost 3 decades, I also try to think into the future. That is to say, not a concern with incumbents, but who may become an incumbent after my decisions are put to the test. And so I'm thinking down the road, how do you stop someone in this environment we're trying to operate in as best we can from sending a text message? Because I got to tell you, when I was up and running on this platform with video, I've been since kicked off by my system. How do you prevent someone from sending a text out of the room? Because I received and sent texts while I was on Zoom on video, and nobody knew it. You couldn't see it. It was invisible.
Right. So, you know, I'm not, you know, if someone is truly determined to do something nefarious, and here, of course, we're presuming a text message is nefarious here, you know, obviously I can see what I can see. We all have our cameras here. And I can ask for people to do certain things. But I can't, you know, I'm unaware of any technology that would allow me to monitor such a thing. Now, what I can say at least is I can see, you know, when the bids come in, I can see the prices that the bids are offered. So in that respect, I can at least check, you know, that it wasn't something that the pattern of bidding didn't look suspicious. And again, that's that's a bit of judgment, but at least, I can say, oh, okay, it wasn't like 5 bids came in and then at the last minute, somebody submitted a bid and it was just the best bid by a nickel or 2 cents. And that might be something that looks suspicious. That's about best I can do. Again, like I said, I'm just unaware of any technology that would allow me to do anything more than that.
Right, so that's not very satisfying for me, I have to tell you. And so I think the OPC is correct. We are owed more information on the security of this alternative system of communications and doing the bidding. And Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I think we should add that to our motion as part of a motion that may go forward, ordering staff and our independent bid monitor to give us more information as requested by OPC with regard to the security of using these platforms.
I have no objection to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Richard.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted, first of all, I definitely agree with the chairman. What we're trying to do here is make sure we have the security of the system, of the auction, and also that we're getting the best prices for our customers from the wholesale market. But I did want to just understand better between option 1 and 3. Can either staff or someone on the phone, since the compliance filing has been submitted to FERC, and we have now some numbers for the MOPRD resource floor prices, does that change anything with regards to how we look at option 1? I wouldn't call it do nothing. It's let's just move forward with the auction, the competitive VRA auction. Or do we still think that there's enough risks there that we do need to set this artificial proxy price, or not artificial, but the formula proxy price? The question is, it seems like that with the compliance filing and the MOPRD floor, we are going to have a lot of resources available to bid in the EMAC and the SWMAC region. So just maybe help me understand why just letting the competitive market come up with the right price as opposed to setting a proxy price.
Commissioner, I think the issue that we've been trying to address all along here has been the level of uncertainty in what the market is going to do. And while we know that there is something that is now going to happen, we don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know what the market's going to do or have any idea what the market's going to do between now and then. And for that matter, we don't even know what, when the process is going to conclude between FERC and PJM. So there remains a lot of uncertainty at this point. Remember, ultimately, the price that's going to be paid is going to reflect what the market does do at the time when PJM actually can set the market. The proxy price is an attempt to just reduce the uncertainty that exists now and to compensate for that in some way. So it just increases the level. I think it increases the level of comfort that people have bidding into the bid that's going to happen within the next month. I don't think anybody viewed it as being a long-term solution or something that was going to ultimately continued for any length of time. And with that, I'll let people who have better comprehension of some of the details of the markets here speak to it.
Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff Trout. I fully endorse what Mr. Spivak just said, and I think he hit the nail on the head as to the key point here, which is whether you use a zero, in effect, use a zero proxy price, or whether you set a proxy price. This is set up so that the ultimate price that is paid by these wholesale suppliers and then for which they are reimbursed through the utilities by our customers, is going to be set by the market, and it will be whatever the actual market price is. This is just a mechanism for making that work. And there are the two choices, and given that there is some experience with the New Jersey model, it's a reasonable choice to make, but they're both reasonable choices, and they both accomplish the same result, which is a market outcome, fully market outcome.
And this is Bill Fields with OPC. I'll just add that the PJM filing that we now have does give us at least PJM's take on a piece of the puzzle for this next auction. That, of course, still needs to be approved, but then that still leaves the uncertainty of all the rest of the market interaction that will end up with the BRA price, which the way this has always been scheduled, that BRA price is then known when these SOS bids are done. This mechanism will just get us back to that same allocation of risk between customers and bidding. And this PJM filing is, like I said, just one piece of the puzzle. It leaves a lot of the general market risk still at play for the wholesale bidders.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that, we're not necessarily skewing the BRA, or not our BRA auction, but our SOS auction if we set this proxy price any more than it might be influenced by the uncertainty, especially given that there are going to be, I think, a lot of resources that will be bidding into both the BRA auction and our auction as well, the SOS auction. But I'm fine with the option or the staff proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner Richard. At this point, I will make a motion and incorporate the suggestion and recommendation from Commissioner O'Donnell. The motion is to approve the supplemental PIP report filed by staff and the plans for the Tranche 3 procurement proposed by Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, Potomac Electric Power Company, Delmarva Power and Light Company, and the Potomac Edison Company in their March 26, 2020 filing, and direct staff, OPC, the bid monitor, and the 4 aforementioned utilities to develop security measures and to have staff file the details of those measures in a report prior to the bid day. The vote begins with Commissioner Richard. Aye. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Linton?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion is approved. Thank you very much. Congratulations. We made it through our first remote virtual administrative meeting with not a lot of trouble. I suspect that we'll gain more experience as we move forward. See many of you back here next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Have a safe and healthy week. Take care. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.